Have you ever had a moment where you looked at your life and quietly said to yourself, "This is not the life I imagined"? Not in anger, not in sadness, but in a deep realization that something inside you is tired. Tired of excuses, tired of waiting, tired of watching time pass while your dreams stay exactly where they were years ago. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize something powerful. Nobody is coming to save you. No one is going to suddenly appear and fix your habits, your discipline, your future, or your life. And the moment you truly understand that, something changes. Because that is the moment you stop waiting. That is the moment you stop blaming circumstances. That is the moment you say one word that changes everything: enough. Enough waking up every day with the same goals but doing nothing about them. Enough telling yourself that you will start tomorrow. Enough watching other people build their dreams while you slowly forget yours. The painful truth is this: most people don't fail because they are not talented. Most people fail because they keep delaying the moment when they decide to take their life seriously. Think about it. How many times did you say you would start working on yourself? How many Mondays did you promise yourself a fresh start? How many nights did you go to sleep telling yourself that tomorrow would be different? And yet tomorrow kept looking exactly the same. Not because you are weak, not because you are incapable, but because change requires a decision that most people avoid. A decision that feels uncomfortable. A decision that forces you to stop lying to yourself, because deep down you already know the truth. You know when you are wasting time. You know when you are choosing comfort over growth. You know when fear is controlling your decisions. And the hardest thing in life is not working hard. The hardest thing in life is being honest with yourself. Honest enough to admit that you could do more. Honest enough to admit that your potential is bigger than the life you are currently living. Honest enough to admit that the only person truly stopping you might be you. But here is the good news. The moment you realize that, you also gain power. Because if you are the one holding yourself back, then you are also the one who can change everything. And that change does not begin with a huge dramatic moment. It begins with a simple decision, a quiet promise you make to yourself, that from this day forward, things will not stay the same. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you finally decide to become stronger. There will always be distractions. There will always be reasons to delay. There will always be days when motivation disappears. But the people who transform their lives understand something important. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is permanent. Motivation is the spark that makes you excited for a few days. Discipline is the fire that keeps you moving for years. And if you look at every person who has ever achieved something extraordinary, you will see one common pattern. They did not wait until they felt ready. They moved forward while feeling uncertain. They worked while feeling tired. They kept going even when nobody believed in them yet. Because they understood something that many people forget. Success is not built in big moments. It is built in small decisions repeated every single day. The decision to wake up when your mind tells you to sleep. The decision to keep learning when progress feels slow. The decision to keep trying when failure makes you doubt yourself. Most people underestimate how powerful those small decisions are. Because they expect instant transformation. They want results in weeks. They want proof that their effort is working immediately. But real growth rarely works that way. Real growth is quiet. Real growth is slow. Real growth happens when nobody is watching. And that is why many people quit too early. They plant a seed and expect a tree the next morning. When that doesn't happen, they lose patience. They lose belief. They convince themselves that success is meant for someone else. But what they don't realize is that every great achievement begins exactly the same way. Invisible. When an athlete begins training, nobody sees the early mornings. When an entrepreneur starts building something, nobody sees the sleepless nights. When someone decides to transform their life, nobody sees the internal battle they fight every single day. Because the hardest battles are not fought in front of crowds. They are fought in silence. In the moments when you must decide between comfort and growth. Between distraction and focus, between quitting and continuing. And every time you choose growth, even in a small way, you are building a different future. A future that most people will never experience because they never had the courage to push through the uncomfortable beginning. You see, the beginning is always the hardest part. The beginning is where doubt is the loudest. The beginning is where progress feels invisible. The beginning is where your old habits fight the hardest to keep you the same. But if you can survive the beginning, if you can keep moving forward even when the results are not obvious, something incredible begins to happen. Your mind becomes stronger, your discipline becomes sharper, your confidence begins to grow, not because someone else gave it to you, but because you earned it. And confidence built through effort is the most powerful kind of confidence that exists. Because once you prove to yourself that you can push through difficulty, you stop fearing it, you stop running from challenges. Instead, you begin to welcome them. Because you understand that every challenge is an opportunity to become someone stronger than you were yesterday. And that is the moment when your life truly begins to change. Not when things become easier, but when you become harder to stop. And when you become harder to stop, something begins to change in the way you see the world. You no longer look at successful people and think they are lucky. Instead, you begin to understand the truth behind every achievement. Behind every victory, there were years of struggle that nobody saw. Behind every confident person, there were moments of doubt that they had to overcome alone. Behind every strong individual, there were days when quitting felt easier than continuing. But they made a decision that many people never make. They refused to stop. You see, the world often celebrates the final result, but it rarely shows the long road that leads there. People see the success. They see the awards. They see the recognition. But they don't see the years when nothing was working. They don't see the failures, the rejections, the nights of frustration where progress felt impossible. That part of the story is usually hidden. And because of that, many people believe success is something magical. They believe that certain people are simply born different. But the truth is far simpler and far more empowering. Success is built through persistence, through continuing when things become uncomfortable, through refusing to let temporary failure become a permanent excuse. Every person who achieves something meaningful eventually faces a moment where quitting feels easier than continuing, a moment where doubt becomes loud, a moment where the path forward looks uncertain. And in that moment, they have two choices. They can step back into the comfort of the familiar, or they can take one more step forward into the unknown. Most people choose comfort because comfort feels safe. Comfort does not demand effort. Comfort does not challenge your limits. But comfort also does not create growth. Growth lives outside the space where everything feels easy. Growth lives in the uncomfortable decisions, the extra hour of work, the extra attempt after failure. The moment you push yourself even when your mind is telling you that you've done enough. That is where transformation happens. Think about the strongest people you know. They were not born with strength. They built it through difficult experiences, through moments that forced them to grow, through challenges that taught them resilience. And the same opportunity exists in every challenge you face. Every obstacle carries a hidden lesson. Every failure carries a piece of wisdom. Every difficult moment carries the potential to shape you into someone stronger. But only if you refuse to give up. The difference between someone who grows and someone who stays the same is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even opportunity. It is the decision to keep going when progress becomes difficult. Imagine two people starting the same journey. Both of them are excited in the beginning. Both of them have big dreams. Both of them believe that they can change their lives. But after a few weeks, things begin to feel harder. Results are slower than expected. Distractions become tempting. Doubt begins to appear. One person slowly returns to old habits. They start telling themselves that maybe the goal was unrealistic. Maybe they are not ready. Maybe they will try again later. But later rarely comes. The other person feels the same doubts. They feel the same frustration. They experience the same slow progress. But they make a different decision. They continue. Even when motivation fades. Even when progress is invisible. Even when nobody else notices their effort. And months later, the difference between these two people becomes clear. Not because one of them was more talented, but because one of them kept going. Consistency creates separation. Small actions repeated over time create massive change. The person who reads a little every day eventually becomes knowledgeable. The person who trains a little every day eventually becomes strong. The person who improves a little every day eventually becomes extraordinary. But this process requires patience. And patience is something many people struggle with. We live in a world that promises instant results. Instant entertainment, instant success, instant recognition. But real achievement does not follow that timeline. Real achievement is built slowly, like a mountain being formed over years of pressure. At first, the progress feels invisible. But over time, the results become undeniable. The challenge is surviving the stage where nothing seems to be happening, because that stage is where most people give up. They stop too early. They walk away just before the breakthrough. They never realize how close they were to something great. Imagine if every time things became difficult, you reminded yourself of one simple truth. This is part of the process. Struggle is not a sign that you are failing. Struggle is often a sign that you are growing. The muscles grow after the strain. The mind grows after the challenge. Character grows after the test. Without resistance, there can be no strength. Without difficulty, there can be no transformation. So instead of fearing the hard moments, begin to see them differently. See them as proof that you are stepping outside the ordinary path. See them as proof that you are attempting something meaningful. Because the easy path rarely leads to a powerful life. The easy path leads to comfort. And comfort, over time, leads to regret. Regret is one of the heaviest feelings a person can carry. The feeling of knowing you had potential but never used it. The feeling of knowing you had time but wasted it. The feeling of wondering what your life could have been if you had simply tried harder. Years from now, you will look back at the decisions you are making today, and those decisions will shape the story you tell about your life. Will it be a story about hesitation? Or will it be a story about courage? Will it be a story about excuses? Or will it be a story about determination? Every day you are writing that story. Every choice you make becomes part of the narrative. The days when you choose discipline instead of distraction. The moments when you choose effort instead of excuses. Those are the moments that quietly build a powerful life. And one day, the same people who never noticed your effort will notice your results. They will see the confidence you carry. They will see the strength you developed. They will see the progress that seemed impossible before. But what they will never fully understand is the quiet decision that started everything. The moment when you stopped negotiating with your potential. The moment when you decided that average was no longer acceptable. The moment when you looked at your habits, your fears, your excuses, and you said one word: enough. There is something powerful that happens the moment a person truly decides they have had enough. Not the kind of decision that lasts for a few hours. Not the kind of motivation that disappears the next morning. But the kind of decision that changes how you see yourself. Because once you decide that the old version of you no longer controls your future, you begin to act differently. You begin to think differently. You begin to move through the world with a new level of awareness. Suddenly, you start noticing how much time people waste. You start noticing how many people talk about big dreams but never take real action. You start noticing how easy it is to fall into the trap of comfort. Comfort is dangerous because it feels harmless. It tells you that resting today is okay. It tells you that you can start tomorrow. It tells you that one more distraction will not hurt. But those small decisions slowly shape your life. One wasted day becomes a wasted week. One wasted week becomes a wasted year. And eventually people wake up one morning and realize they are living a life they never intentionally chose. That life was created by small, careless decisions repeated over time. But the opposite is also true. A powerful life is created by small, intentional decisions repeated every day. The decision to focus when distractions are everywhere. The decision to improve when nobody is forcing you. The decision to continue when it would be easier to quit. Every time you make one of those decisions, you strengthen something inside you. You strengthen discipline. You strengthen self-respect. You strengthen the belief that you are capable of more than you once thought. Self-respect is something many people overlook, but it is one of the most important foundations of success. Because when you respect yourself, you stop making choices that destroy your potential. You stop lying to yourself about what you need to do. You stop settling for habits that keep you stuck. Instead, you begin to hold yourself to a higher standard, not because someone else expects it from you, but because you expect it from yourself, and that internal standard becomes your guide. When nobody is watching, it reminds you to keep going. When distractions appear, it reminds you of your purpose. When doubt appears, it reminds you of the promise you made to yourself. But let's be honest for a moment. The journey of improvement is not always exciting. There will be long periods where progress feels slow. There will be days where you question whether the effort is worth it. There will be moments where you feel like you are the only one taking your goals seriously. Those moments are part of the journey. Every person who has ever built something meaningful has experienced them. The difference is that they did not treat those moments as a signal to stop. They treated them as a signal to keep going. Because they understood something very important. The beginning of every transformation is lonely. At first, nobody sees the vision except you. At first, nobody understands why you are pushing yourself so hard. At first, people may even question your choices. They may say you are working too much. They may say your goals are unrealistic. They may say you should relax and enjoy life more. And sometimes those voices can make you doubt yourself. But you must remember something. Most people give advice based on their own limits. They project their fears onto your ambitions. They project their comfort onto your discipline. But your life does not have to follow the limits that others accept. Your life can become something greater, something meaningful, something powerful. But only if you are willing to stay committed when the journey becomes difficult. The truth is, the world does not reward people for having dreams. The world rewards people for executing those dreams. Ideas are common. Ambition is common. But disciplined action is rare. That is why the person who combines vision with consistent effort becomes unstoppable over time. Because effort compounds. Just like money grows through investment, effort grows through consistency. A little work every day may not feel impressive, but over months and years it becomes extraordinary. Think about learning a skill. The first day feels awkward. The first week feels frustrating. The first month feels slow. But if you continue long enough, there comes a moment where everything begins to connect. Suddenly, the skill that once seemed impossible begins to feel natural. And people who see you at that stage often say something interesting. They say you are talented. They say you are gifted. They say you are lucky. But what they did not see were the hundreds of hours of practice. They did not see the mistakes. They did not see the days when you felt like quitting. They only saw the final result. This happens in every field: athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, writers, leaders. The public only sees the outcome. But the outcome is built on countless invisible efforts. And those efforts only exist because someone decided that quitting was not an option. Imagine if you adopted that mindset. Imagine if quitting was no longer part of your vocabulary. Imagine if every challenge was simply another step on the path instead of a reason to stop. Your life would begin to look very different. Because most obstacles that stop people are not permanent. They are temporary difficulties that appear bigger than they really are. A setback feels like failure. A rejection feels like the end. A slow result feels like proof that the effort is useless. But when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, those moments are simply part of the process. Every powerful story includes setbacks. Every meaningful journey includes obstacles. Without them, growth would not exist. And once you begin to see challenges this way, something changes inside you. You stop fearing failure. Instead, you start using it. Every mistake becomes feedback. Every setback becomes information. Every difficulty becomes training for your character. And slowly, you become someone who is very hard to defeat. Because failure no longer stops you. It teaches you. Criticism no longer breaks you. It strengthens you. Difficulty no longer scares you. It prepares you. That is the mindset of people who build extraordinary lives. They do not avoid hard things. They become strong enough to face them. And strength is not something you are born with. Strength is something you develop through persistence, through discipline, through the decision to keep going even when it would be easier to stop. At some point in your journey, you will face a moment that tests everything, a moment where progress slows down, a moment where doubt becomes loud again, a moment where the comfort of your old habits begins to call you back. That moment is critical. Because what you choose in that moment will define the direction of your life. You can return to the familiar patterns that keep you safe but stuck, or you can push forward into the uncertainty that leads to growth. And in that moment, you must remind yourself of the reason you started. You must remember the frustration that made you say enough. You must remember the promise you made to yourself. Because that promise is the foundation of your new life. A life built on effort instead of excuses. A life built on discipline instead of distractions. A life built on courage instead of fear. And once you fully commit to that path, something incredible begins to happen. You start becoming the person you once admired. The person who stays focused. The person who keeps improving. The person who refuses to settle for an average life. And one day you will look back at the moment when everything changed. The quiet moment when you looked at your life and decided that the old version of you was finished. The moment when excuses lost their power. The moment when doubt stopped controlling your actions. The moment when you made a decision that changed your direction forever. The moment when you said, enough. There will come a day when you look back at this period of your life and realize that it was the moment everything began to change. Not because the world suddenly became easier, not because obstacles disappeared, but because you finally made a decision that most people avoid their entire lives. You decided to take responsibility for your future. Responsibility is a powerful word. Many people run from it because it feels heavy. It means you can no longer blame circumstances. It means you can no longer blame the past. It means you accept that your life will largely become the result of the choices you make every single day. And while that truth may feel uncomfortable at first, it is also incredibly empowering. Because once you accept responsibility, you also gain control. Control over your habits, control over your direction, control over the effort you are willing to give. And when you begin to take control of those things, the trajectory of your life begins to change. Think about how powerful a single decision can be. One decision to stop wasting your mornings. One decision to invest time in learning instead of distractions. One decision to keep going when quitting feels easier. Those small decisions may not feel dramatic in the moment, but over time they shape everything. Your discipline grows. Your confidence grows. Your resilience grows. And slowly, the person you are becoming starts to look very different from the person you used to be. This transformation does not happen overnight. It happens quietly. It happens gradually, day by day. But the compound effect of consistent effort is unstoppable. A year from now, the results of your discipline will begin to show. 2 years from now, the difference between you and the version of yourself who never started will be enormous. 5 years from now, the life you are living could be something you once thought was impossible. All because of a single moment when you decided that enough was enough. The world often tries to convince people that change is impossible, that people cannot truly transform themselves. But history proves the opposite. Every great achievement began with someone refusing to stay the same, someone refusing to accept limits placed on them by others, someone refusing to give up on the vision they carried inside their mind. And that same ability exists inside you. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to eliminate fear completely. You only need to move forward despite those things. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision to act even when fear is present. Every time you act with courage, your confidence grows stronger. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-respect grows deeper. And over time, you begin to trust yourself. Trust that you will show up. Trust that you will continue. Trust that you will not abandon your goals the moment things become difficult. That trust is one of the most valuable things you can ever build. Because once you trust yourself, your limits begin to expand. You stop questioning whether you are capable. Instead, you begin asking how far you can go, how much you can learn, how much you can grow, how much you can achieve if you simply refuse to stop. Many people underestimate how powerful persistence truly is. They believe extraordinary lives require extraordinary talent. But in many cases, extraordinary lives are built by ordinary people who simply refused to quit. People who kept learning. People who kept adapting. People who kept moving forward long after others lost interest. And that persistence eventually creates something remarkable. It creates momentum. Momentum is powerful because once it begins, progress starts accelerating. The habits you struggled to build become natural. The discipline that once felt exhausting becomes routine. The confidence that once seemed impossible becomes part of your identity. And suddenly the life that once felt out of reach begins to feel real. But remember something important. This journey will never truly end. Growth is not a destination. Growth is a lifestyle. There will always be new challenges. There will always be new levels to reach. There will always be new opportunities to improve. And that is the beauty of it. Because a life dedicated to growth is a life that never becomes stagnant. It is a life filled with purpose. A life filled with progress. A life where each year you become a stronger version of yourself. And when you reach that stage, something interesting happens. The same struggles that once felt like obstacles begin to feel like opportunities. The same challenges that once scared you begin to excite you. Because you know that every difficulty carries the potential to shape you into someone better. And when you look back at the person you used to be, you realize how far you have come. You remember the doubts. You remember the hesitation. You remember the nights when you wondered if change was possible. But you also remember the moment when you decided that things had to be different. The moment when excuses stopped controlling your life. The moment when fear stopped making your decisions. The moment when you looked at your habits, your doubts, your wasted time, and you made a promise to yourself. A promise that you would no longer settle for less than your potential. A promise that you would no longer let time slip away without purpose. A promise that you would fight for the life you truly wanted. And that promise started with a single word. Enough. Enough waiting for the perfect time. Enough doubting your own ability. Enough letting comfort steal your future. From that moment forward, you chose growth. You chose discipline, you chose courage. And those choices slowly began to transform everything. Your mindset, your habits, your confidence, your future. One day, years from now, you may look back at this exact moment, and you may realize that this was the moment when the direction of your life truly changed. Not because of a huge event, not because of luck, but because you made a decision that many people never make. A decision to rise above your excuses. A decision to outwork your doubts. A decision to become the person you were always capable of becoming. And it all began with a quiet moment of honesty. A moment where you looked at your life and said the words that changed everything. Enough.